Sometimes the fire of ambition burns bright. And other times, the fire burns so bright that your house just burns completely to the ground. That's the story of a lot of mod projects, unfortunately. Especially when it comes to new creators. The amount of people I see wanting to make Fallout mods will often jump in with both feet, wanting their first ever mod to be a DLC-sized expansion. And do they know how to use the GAC? How to script? How to get voice acting? Well, usually no. So of course, these mods, as ambitious as they are, go the way of the dodo. My entrance into the Fallout modding arena was no different. So today I'm going to be talking about some of the mod projects I created that never came to be. And hell, you should be glad because a lot of these mods were pretty bad. So without further ado, sit back and laugh your ass off at these really stupid projects that I thankfully decided to never release. The first mod I created went through several iterations before it was eventually canned. And canned for good reason. We're talking about a DLC-size mod that added a new lands arena to the edge of the New Vegas world space. The mod was called Red Canyon. Yes, I know Red Rock Canyon is an existing location, and this mod had absolutely nothing to do with it being on the other side of the map. I was 12 to 13 around that time, so making coherent decisions was not in the playbook. The mod went through several names, one of which being Dead City, but Red Canyon was the trailer title I decided to go for when I made this really terrible trailer for it. Thank God nobody actually watched this. It's still available on my channel if you want to watch the trailer to its entirety. Very little of this mod still exists besides a few photos I found on my old PC and this old trailer. The story of the mod was as follows. Just outside Brooks' Tumbleweed Ranch, following the long and lonely highway, the player would follow it to discover a new city. Mesa City. With the exception of the outskirts of the town and a casino at its center, the city was entirely ravaged by monsters and mutant creatures. The player would have to navigate a decrepit highway, mountain cliffs, and a metro tunnel to lead directly into the casino. The actual pathway to the casino from the city outskirts differed many times as the mod went through several iterations. There ended up being 5 versions of this mod. With each time, I'd refine the path to the casino with a series of nonsensical obstacles. At one point, the player would arrive at this location by vertibird, starting in a small NCR compound that was an exact clone of Crimson Caravan. Every time I made it through, I got better at the GEC, but I can't deny the entire mod was just a little bit goofy. The mod was inspired by Sly Cooper, or more specifically, that first part of the second level of the game, a chapter titled A Rocky Start. Unironically, this is a concept that I actually would use in a mod I did release, Tales of Reno Episode 2. My goal with designing the outskirts of the city was to try to get like a 1-to-1 ratio, or at least as close as I could get to it, because as a kid I really enjoyed that level and I wanted to explore it more, and this avenue gave me a chance to try and do that. That was the only salvageable concept from this mod, if you could even call it that. The entire concept of this mod was a city inside a casino, thriving in the middle of a completely ruined, desolate city. The only way to access it was to take an underground tunnel. To me, this now seems stupid and nonsensical. Especially because this so-called city was receiving supplies through a very narrowly carved, civilized path through miles of urban ruins. I unfortunately don't have too many pictures showing off what this place looked like, but by my standards today, I can confirm that this level design was really bad. Although admittedly, a part of me really does want to see this again, but those files are long gone. And I haven't even gotten to the story of this mod yet. Now granted, I never took notes on any of this. This is all from memory. I have an absurdly good memory when it comes to projects I've created, and man, I can't believe I remembered all this crap. So you're probably wondering what the story is. Well, it's definitely something that a 12-year-old would write. The player would arrive at a massive casino city and meet with the leader of this place. The casino, of course, was never named. The leader of this town, we'll just call him Mayor Character for now, hires the player to help him set up a treaty with the NCR because they're hoping to make an alliance. The player would go to a local NCR outpost to set up this deal, and in return an NCR emissary would be sent to the casino city and meet with the Mayor Character to be promptly assassinated in the mayor's own office by an unknown figure. The Mayor Character, now realizing that the NCR will now see him as an enemy, begs the player to track down the assassin and prove the city's innocence. The player would then track down the assassin in a vault deep in the city, and find out that the Find out that the assassin was a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, or more specifically, the part of the Brotherhood of Steel that Christine Royce was a part of. If I recall correctly, that's the Circle of Steel, the kind of special agents of the Brotherhood. I don't recall that lore super well. Anyway, you find out this Steel agent was sent to kill the mayor of the casino because he's secretly an Enclave soldier, and so are most of the people living in the casino city. And at this point, you'd be forced to side with the assassin and attack the casino. The city would be filled with guards at this point trying to kill you because, of course, they somehow know of your betrayal. You fight your way to the roof of the casino where you kill the mayor character inside a vertibird. After that, I guess the mod would end. I don't really remember, honestly. It's kind of a miracle I remember that much about the story because, like I said, I never wrote any of this down. I was so dedicated to that idea for a while that this is all I could think about, and yeah, I was a weird kid. I must have thought this story was pretty badass, but no, this is stupid. That's not even mentioning the dumb side quests I had planned. There was this one side quest where you had to find a bunch of rocks in a desert for an old man. That sound familiar? That's totally not Ratchet & Clank 2. There was another quest where you'd meet a powder ganger named Maxwell who had a bounty on him. Not much to that one, and it's actually a quest that I ended up putting in Tales of Nerino Episode 1. And finally, there was a quest where you had to track down a long-lost hero who got lost in the city ruins. He was supposedly the guy who founded the city or something, and it didn't really have much to it other than that. Oh, and how could I forget about a quest that had talking deathclaws that lived together in an old skyscraper? Actually, I don't really think there was a quest. That was just like an area I had planned and just did not have the skill to create at that time. Keep in mind, at this point, I didn't even know how to do basic scripts or navmesh yet, not to mention that the world space itself was incredibly amateur. I believe the casino I designed at one point ended up kind of intersecting with Jacobstown, which was stupid. And by intersecting, I mean it was just like way too close. You could kind of see the casino from the Jacobstown Lodge, and it was silly. Ultimately, this mod never came to fruition because I was just not prepared to make it. Skill was not there. And thankfully, I never did make it because this story is cringe and stupid. Ultimately, I decided to make a smaller mod, a small compact quest mod that took place in Vegas itself before I ever decided to actually make a larger mod that had its own world space. Thus, the very first episode of Tales of Nerino came to be. The 2014 edition, which I made when I was 14 or 15. Now keep in mind, this mod is not the mod you can download off the Nexus. I'm in fact referring to a far shittier version, and my older mods I plan to cover in an entirely different video, so make sure you like this one. Might inspire me to talk a bit more about my older, shittier projects that actually came out. Anyway, let's move on to the next mod that I thankfully never released. This next project did not really get that far, but was definitely inspired by my recent playthrough of Fallout 2 at the time. While I was making the Red Canyon mod, my impulsive brain told me, hey, let's remake Fallout 2 in the new Vegas engine. Yeah, fuck Fallout 1, we're going straight to 2. I put that shit right smack dab in the middle of the Vegas world space and the unused parts of the map, and I made Gecko, Broken Hills, and even attempted to make Vault City. And as you can imagine, they were shit. And also in a location that should not have items in it at all. You would get to this world space through a cave in Mount Charleston that would teleport you to this house at the edge of the earth, and yeah, I didn't work on that mod long, and it was stupid and bad, and yeah, it's gone. Okay, this next mod was a lot less taxing, but I'm really embarrassed to even admit that I ever attempted an idea like this. This mod never got a name, thank God, and I only worked on it for like 2 days, but God, what was so bad? It was so bad, I almost just didn't even bother to talk about it in this video. This mod would be a simple dungeon crawl, which sounds simple, but I didn't know how to make interiors yet. Outside of Novak, you'd meet a guy named Chris McLean. Yeah, that guy. And he'd hire the player alongside a team of people to scavenge this research base that, for some reason, had its only entrance right next to the highway, where Mr. McLean had a tent set up right over the entrance. I don't really remember the other characters' names, but they were probably also characters from Total Drama Island. And writing this script, I am now realizing that this is indeed one of the cringiest things I have ever attempted to make. Granted, I was like 12, but I still shudder at the fact that I even attempted to make this at all. I gave up on it because, like I said, interiors were too hard to do at the time, and I didn't know the grid function existed. Coming up next, we had an even smaller mod that also never came out. It was called Wasteland Psychopaths. There was no story behind it, no quests, not much of anything really. You just run into random NPCs that would attack you on sight. I don't remember a lot of it, but I'm pretty sure 90% of these new Wasteland bosses were just Dead Rising psychopaths in the Fallout universe. We had the convicts from Dead Rising 1, just a couple of powder gangers that are hanging out by the wrecked highwayman. We had Ted and Snowflake from Dead Rising 2, which was a super mutant and a Deathclaw pet, hanging out by the old wind farm. And there were plenty of asshole snipers all around as well. The only unique bosses were, there was a male sniper named Georgia, don't ask. Oh, and there were guys with hockey masks and machetes and blue jumpsuits, just called Wasteland Psychos. Go ahead and guess what that's based off of. Technically, I finished this mod, but I never released it because, I don't know, it was stupid and a waste of time. Okay, at this point, these were all mods that I made before I actually released my first mod. This is all prior to 2014 when I officially started posting things on Nexus. There are a few more dead projects after this point, but a lot of the good cringe gold was prior to 2014. I don't recall when I worked on this next project, but I do know it was after I released a few mods. This particular project was a mod that also never really got a name, and it really wasn't my idea in the first place. At this point, people knew who I was, and I had a lot of folks coming to me asking for mod requests. And of course, I ate this up and accepted a lot of them. This one in particular is an individual I met over Skype that brought me onto a team of modders. The project went into several directions and I never really understood what was going on at any given moment, and that's usually what happens when you accept deals from idea guys. This project in particular, though, started out as a Fallout 4 mod. But at one point I was asked to make a Fallout New Vegas mod by the head of this group. And what was the mod, you ask? Well, let's take Fallout New Vegas, and let's add a circus. That's right, a circus in New Vegas, or more specifically, they're in Boulder City. Why? I honestly don't remember. All I do remember is you'd meet a clown in Novak who got lost, and you help him out. There was going to be rides, a haunted house, carnies, a big top, and more clowns. Yeah, I only really made the quest starter, and that's as far as I got. I think the guy who asked me to make this forgot that it even happened, and I don't blame him, because I barely remember it, and I sure as hell don't remember why I started working on it. After that, that's the end of New Vegas projects that never came out, like official dead projects that I will probably never start up again. But I do have some things for Fallout 4 to talk about, because I did attempt to do some Fallout 4 modding back in the day, and none of that ever really came to fruition. Are these projects officially dead? Probably. Is it possible that I might start these up again? Well, probably. Who knows? Who knows what's in the future? But either way, let's talk about these. Now, going back to that Skype group I was in years ago, must have been around 2016, but like I said, I don't recall specifically. This was a time before Discord, so we were all using Skype, if you can believe that. And this was around the same time that I joined Fallout the Frontier as well. Anyway, this particular other project was called Pilgrim's Landing, I think? The mod revolved around a faction made up of descendants from the Jamestown reenactment actors who followed a twisted form of Puritanism. I remember there being a lot of Asian-oriented stuff, and I ended up making a companion for this, and it did not work at all when I submitted it to the team. It was a tribalistic companion named Boomstick, who, like the name suggests, carried a double-barreled shotgun and rocks a styling tomahawk. Technically, I finished it, but I don't have it, and you can't download it anywhere, so I guess technically this is a dead mod, so yeah. That's all I really ended up doing for the Pilgrim's Landing team. I don't know what happened to Pilgrim's Landing at all. I don't know if it's ever going to come to fruition or if people are still working on it, but if they are, best of luck to them. So after Boomstick, I tried making another Fallout 4 mod. This time I was going to make it so that there were survivors in Vault 111. You know, Sole Survivor my ass. In here, you would rescue a retired detective named Callahan, who somehow survived the cryo chamber, and an overweight teenage kid with serious edgy vibes. Yeah, I don't know why I included the edgy kid. I think I may have cut him at one point, but he was, at one point, a part of the mod. I think he was just Eddie from Silent Hill 2. That was for the most part his character.
How can you sit there and eat pizza?
Anyway, the detective character would become a companion that would serve as an alternative to Nick Valentine to find Sean. Also, it would be an interesting way to tie the player character back to the pre-war world. And once you find the Institute, however, you'd find out that your detective friend, and maybe the edgy kid, I don't remember, were synths the entire time. They were specifically designed by Father to become an unknowing guide to the player to bring them to the Institute. I actually finished this mod, and posted it, and even got it voiced too, but on the Nexus the mod broke horribly, so I took it down. I wouldn't mind trying this mod again in the future, actually, because I still kind of like the premise, that just remove the edgy kid. And I might replace the Nick Valentine replacement angle by making this detective a police officer instead of a full-blown detective, because I really don't want to tread on the toes of the likable and lovable Nick Valentine, our one true and only synth detective. What might be interesting, now that I'm writing this, is if Callahan ended up having the same base personality that they gave Nick, but ended up becoming a different person because Callahan never ended up learning he was a synth, until of course the part of the story where you get to the Institute. So in that regard, they would technically be the same person, but be different characters altogether. I think this idea has some really great potential, and I might actually attempt it again if I ever get back to making Fallout 4 mods. But until then, don't steal this idea. It's mine. I tried a few other mods before starting a huge ambitious project for Fallout 4. Few of them are barely worth mentioning, but I'll speedrun through them. One was a mod where you had to track down a bounty across the Wasteland. Gave up because I hadn't really explored Fallout 4's world space that much, and honestly, wow, bounty quest, what an original idea. Honestly, there are still a few things in Fallout 4 that I still haven't seen yet because I haven't bothered to fully finish the game. I finished the main quest, there's still a few side quests that I haven't started, there's still a few locations that I've never been to. I don't even think I've even been to Salem. I know that's one of the more popular quests, but I've never actually been there in Fallout 4. I really gotta get around to doing that. After the bounty quest went belly up, I decided to remake a New Vegas mod that I had done in the past and released on Nexus, but do it in Fallout 4 because that would, honestly, the concept of this mod would make more sense in Fallout 4, to a degree. And that mod was Open Waters. Now, like I said, I'll be making a video explaining my posted projects that I find cringe these days, but what Open Waters was basically a really bad fanfiction that basically made the player character Solid Snake. It was bad. It was really bad. And the Fallout 4 version would be less cringe, hopefully. Maybe I'll make it one day, just because I like the idea of a shooting gallery with Enclave soldiers, but until then, this mod is pretty much dead. I ended up making the intro to the mod, where you'd meet a couple of people at this new port town that you can actually build as a new settlement, but yeah, there's not much to it. There would be like this expedition to an island, you'd crash on the island, and you'd find out the island was a secret Enclave base. There's not really much to it other than that. Finally, we're at the last dead project for Fallout 4. And this is one that I've actually made reference to in some projects that I've released, because I do want to get back to this one day, but probably never will. There are a ton of locations that people really want to see in Fallout. One of them that keeps popping up is Detroit. And so I came up with Fallout the Metropolis. Detroit, now called Motor City, was under the control of two crime families, the Forsettis and the Greyhounds. I know, lame names. They were in a constant power struggle for the location. Some gangs operated factories. Other gangs ran protection rackets and owned businesses. It wasn't thought out very deeply, and half the city was destroyed, so a large part of it was just uncivilized ruins. The mod was actually going to be very Blade Runner themed, with one part of the city being extremely technologically advanced, and the other part being a horrible slum with pockets of technology everywhere. The idea was ambitious, to say the least, especially for just starting out with Fallout 4 modding. One of the factions that I was really excited for was a faction known as the Nomads. a gang of raiders led by a ruthless leader named the Iconoclast. Their raider-like cult would go around destroying civilizations because they believed that civilization was dead and should remain so. Anyone who survived their destruction was assimilated into their gang, kind of like how the Legion does it, but a little bit more ruthless, if that's even possible. Like their name suggests, this faction was always on the move, and Motor City would be their crowning achievement to take over. Unfortunately, the Midwestern Brotherhood of Steel was also a factor, although much less so. While the Nomads are trying to break into the city, and the Brotherhood are trying to get a meeting with the city leaders, the two gangs of the city are trying to find a vault long lost in the ruins. It's alleged to be bountiful, full of many different advanced technologies and treasures of the old world, but was never actually opened after the bombs fell. And so, it ended up being a story of a bunch of factions fighting over a city. Isn't that just New Vegas? A lot of my mod concepts are just, hey, it's this game, but slightly different, or in a different universe, or blah blah blah. I'm not really that original, am I? Anyway, I canceled this mod because I wanted to remake the Tales of the Reno series, and ended up being sidetracked with how large I made those mods. And you know what, that might have been for the best, because a lot of people really liked the remakes of the Reno series, and it's gotten to the point where people don't even remember the original mods. And thank God for that. So for all intents and purposes, this mod is mostly dead. But hey, I might get back to it one day. Only time will tell. I think I still have the files somewhere, but I think if I ever went back to this, I'd just remake the mod from scratch. I don't even use a height map for this, and honestly, a height map would have helped a lot more to make this thing geographically accurate, because the original map that I made was definitely not geographically accurate by any means. Alright everybody, that was a comprehensive list of dead projects, and hopefully for most of them, you can understand why they're dead. I don't know why I had the compulsion to make this video, but it was nice to revisit the past for a bit. Thanks for watching everybody, and stay tuned for future videos where I might talk about my posted work. And hopefully, I'll make that War Trash review. You know, the one on part 2. I've been dreading making that video. For good reason. Good reason. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time.